Hello, Internet. I am Zentai from the forums, and you guys are watching our Farthest Frontier developer livestream. And today I'm going to answer your burning questions and hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into what's coming up for the game from the upcoming version 0.9 and bring us all the way to 1.0. Now, I will say right off the bat that our next update is actually going to be our largest one yet. So stay tuned today and we'll show you quite a bit of what's coming and a little bit of what's beyond that. How are you guys doing today? Oh, this is actually a Grim Dawn 2 reveal. Yeah, total joke. Like, this has nothing to do with Farthest Frontier. We're actually gonna get right back into Grim Dawn with version 2. See, we have some new faces. Picked up a game just last week. Already 30 hours played. Nice. Release dates, we'll get into release dates for the next patch and the game in general. We'll talk about how long early access will be, or hopefully will be, coming right up. Let's actually unpause the game here. Just sitting here on a pause game. How's my volume too? I haven't had a chance to actually test this stuff. Loving the music, good. Is my voice volume okay? I can potentially turn myself up a bit. Any post full launch updates planned? Well, definitely have plans. I'm not sure if I'll talk about them today. Volume's good. Okay, great. So if you're looking at my town over here, that's a good mid-population town, 500 people. You might already be seeing some new things in here that are coming in this next patch. Effects are too loud. I'll turn the music or the game down a little bit then. Here, we'll do that. This game's awesome. You'll pick it up soon. Well, I hope you enjoy it. You see a lot of new buildings. Yes, there are quite a few new buildings this time around. Any other secret games in development? Let's see. 1, 2, 3. A few. Not quite ready to be talked about yet today, though. 600 hours. Nice. How long? When did you pick the game up, though? Like, not yesterday. Grim Dawn for the win. I'm glad you guys are still enjoying Grim Dawn as much as you are, honestly. The game's had much longer tail than we ever would have anticipated. And maybe there'll be something exciting for you guys on the Grim Dawn front later this year. You've played recently and the hardest difficulty is much harder than before. Are we talking about Grim Dawn or Farthest Frontier? Because technically I guess both are a little harder than they used to be. So let's dive a little bit into what's coming up. First up, patch 0.9. So this is going to be our next major update for Farthest Frontier. It's going to include quite a few new buildings, quite a bit of optimization, bug fixes, all the good stuff. So the first major feature, and if you've been paying attention to our posts that we've made on social media and stuff, there's a picture of a pretty neat giant building. And that actually brings us to the major feature of this update, which is the spirituality system. That's something that you guys have been asking for from pretty much the beginning of early access, and we understand why. It's something that we didn't think we were going to do for early access, but given how much the community wanted it, we actually prioritized it. Went into a design that we were going to be happy with, not just, throw in some buildings, say it, so it fills in a little bar, and call it a day. Like, it's not just a decoration you're going to be throwing in. The spirituality system is a major addition that's going to tie into all aspects of gameplay, actually. So, where does that lead us? You might notice shrines actually have a little person working in front of them now. Those are preachers. They're priests. They're spreading the good word of whatever your faith is in town. And that's one way we actually reuse this building in this case. But the new building for spirituality is this temple over here. This is a tier 1 temple. The one you saw in the picture on Facebook and stuff is the tier 2 upgraded one. The temple is the central building for the spirituality system. That's going to be where you actually customize your faith. And you might be wondering how you customize your faith. And this is where the gameplay comes into play. What we decided to do for our spirituality system is to have relics you can acquire, and those relics will confer bonuses onto your town. This could affect everything from how your crops grow, to the happiness of your people, to their health, to how much damage your soldiers are doing. There's actually one special relic that actually makes things harder for those achievement hunters out there, which, surprise, for 1.0 we are going to have achievements. We actually have them up before we hit 1.0, probably version 0.9.5. We'll see if they're ready in time for that. But if you're interested in achievements for the game, they are coming, and they will be tied even to the religion system over here that I'm talking about right now. So, relics. Let's open up the temple building right here, and you can see that I've got 2 relics assigned right now. We've got the Eye of the Hunter and the Shard of Markovian's Blade. And if you've played Grim Dawn, you might be seeing some tie-ins to familiar content. And you can see underneath that I already have some relics available. These are relics that I've collected during this town's playtime. And which relics you do get in each session might vary a little bit. Ultimately, if you play long enough, you should be able to acquire every single relic that's available for like a town that might be 100 years old. But in a typical playthrough, you're not actually going to be seeing the same relics every time. So you can see in my case, I've got 7 relics already collected. And they each do a different thing. So for example, Markovian's Blade, which is the one I have equipped because I'm playing on Vanquisher difficulty with Raiders on, soldiers and guards do 15% more damage. So I want my dudes to be taking care of those Raiders before anyone gets hurt. But there's all sorts of other bonuses you can get. Trees growing faster, orchards producing more fruit, bows, crossbows, and towers dealing more damage, which again, I'm playing pretty defensively here. Food spoiling slower. Villagers getting hungry slower. Birth rate and health of villagers increased by 10%, and that little sneaky one I mentioned before, raiders and wildlife are more deadly and aggressive. So if you are a bit of a masochist or you want a bigger challenge, that's going to be the relic for you. Now I mentioned how you might be acquiring these relics. There's multiple paths to doing that. The first one actually ties into exploration. And if you go out into the world with your villagers, you will find ruins, ancient sites of a forgotten people that you can explore and excavate to discover new relics. And that's actually going to be the main method by which you will be acquiring these. The second is through merchants, actually. So I don't have a merchant in here right now, but you will find it once you're playing patch 0.9 that merchants will be arriving and they will have some rare relics for sale on at times. They will be expensive, but worth it. Is there a separate team that works on Grim Dawn, or is it all one team for Farthest Frontier? So we have enough people right now that we do have some people that are handling Grim Dawn stuff and some people that are handling exclusively Frontier stuff. We have people that are handling some other projects too that we're not yet ready to talk about yet today. What do I think about poor fishing efficiency? The lake is too useless. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how big of a lake we're talking about. It is possible to overfish a lake and run out of fish. But fishing is pretty comparable to hunting and other means of producing food. Hold on, I have a puppy here complaining to be let out, so I'll do that. Is there a rarity for a relics? Do you have an equal chance for all of them? There is a rarity to them. They are not all equal. And so in terms of which ones you might get in each session will vary by pure chance. So each time you excavate one of these ruins, you're going to get a relic. That might not be the same relic in this playthrough versus another one. So it's not like the first ruin you uncover will always be relic X or something. One thing I didn't mention though about assigning relics is that once you assign 3 relics, which is when you get to the tier 2 temple, you're actually going to start generating religion names. So I've got the Temple of New Beginnings, which is kind of the default. You can rename it if you want. So let's call it the Temple of Twitch, because that's where we're on right now. And you can name that to whatever you want. There will be automatically generated names based on the relic combinations you choose, but if you don't like the name that's generated for you, you can change it. And there's some pretty fun ones in there. So mix and match and see what you guys get. One thing that's come up before on our forums and stuff is that raiders aren't dropping loot. So good news for those of you that are interested in that, because raiders actually will have a chance to drop relics. So raiders are attacking you, you kick them out. Some of the raiders that fall might have a chance to drop a new relic for you, which is another method of acquiring them. Rocket, stop interrupting the stream. There's actually a new puppy. She's only like 4 months old and quite loud. But she's outside now, so it's fine. Any plans for combo artifacts? We actually did consider having like combinations. So depending on which 3 relics you put in, you get like a set bonus. And what we found in practice was that it kind of ended up collapsing the options, because you would find yourself either forced to make a combination to get a specific set bonus you wanted, or you would end up with a set bonus you don't want, and thus you'd have to change the combination you actually wanted to do. So rather than doing combinations, we decided to keep it very free form. Whatever 3 relics you want to use, you can combine them, and there's no like pros and cons to certainly specific combinations. And yes, it is possible to buy relics via merchants. And I'll also mention, and for anyone that is here right now and needs to leave before the stream is over and I've gotten to everything, everything I'm saying right now on this stream, will be up on YouTube, and we're gonna make a giant post on our forum right after this stream for you guys to digest to your heart's content. Were we always able to see people behind buildings like you see now, how they're turning the blue outline? Yeah, that's always been a feature. Another thing I'll mention about the ruins is that if you do excavate them, they will actually stay behind. So if you like the aesthetic of having a ruin kind of on the hill up near your town, you can actually keep that ruin just as a decoration, or you'll be able to harvest it for stone. So for those of you that want to clear up the space, totally doable. If you like the aesthetic, you can keep them. Any updates on terrain leveling? The terrain leveling has been buffed a few times already. So if you're talking about like changing that mechanic, I'm not sure that's really in the cards right now, but we'll see down the line. Any plans to add bridges? Really could use a few bridges in my world. I totally agree that there's some maps that would love to have a bridge on them. Bridges are something we are saving for post-release. Just water gameplay in general. Like, I think we could expand on fishing, make that more interesting, like fishing boats and stuff. Have traders arriving via boat would be pretty cool. But all that sort of water gameplay, I think, is best saved as a post-release content thing. Just like one big water-themed DLC. Yes, there's one temple in the city. They do have a pretty big area of influence, but for the areas that doesn't reach, that's where the shrines come in. Building canals. I don't know about canals. We'll have to see. I mean, there's so many considerations for making water gameplay that we have to kind of work through that I can't say like, oh, for sure we're gonna do canals. But it's something worth considering. Any progress on water level spawning issues where resources like stone or some plant spawns inside of water and becomes unreachable? I think we addressed most cases of that happening. So if that is still happening, we'll just have to try to iron out those last few kinks. You built a super pretty city once and still got stuck at 30 or 70 people. So there was actually a bug before the last patch that would cause you to potentially get stuck in that range just because of how immigration was scripted. So I shouldn't say bug. It was working exactly as it was supposed to. The problem was that if you didn't progress through that range in the right amount of time, you could actually end up with much less immigration than you were supposed to. So we changed that mechanic, so it was based on time instead of population, so that this shouldn't be happening anymore. Are we planning to bring First Frontier to Apple Silicon Macs? I can't say we have any plans to port to Mac, no. So next, in terms of major features for this episode, because like I said, this is a huge patch. The religion system is a major addition, and that alone will, I think, offer you guys many more options in terms of how you want to develop your town. But that's actually not all for this patch. Next up, we have the paper industry, and I think some sleuths peeking around in the resource window might have actually noticed that there were hints of these buildings already in the game as of the last patch. But when I say the paper industry, I mean a few things. First, you're going to need a paper mill, which is this building right over here. These guys will turn flax into paper. Now, what is paper going to be for? The common sense conclusion would be that you will be making books, and you would be correct, because we have the bookbinder right over here. This quaint little building. They're binding books right in there, producing them for town. Books will serve a couple purposes, at least initially. One of which is to be a new luxury item for your high-tier home. So those houses that are like tier 3, tier 4, or maybe even just tier 4, will consume books to generate taxes. But that is not their only purpose in this update. We also have the library. And much like the pub, you will be stocking books in the library in order to generate entertainment for your villagers. Optimization improvements coming. So optimization is an ongoing effort. We've actually done optimization pretty much every patch since the year started. So I think 0.8 was like the first major push to improve performance, and we've done that for every update since. And this update is no exception. There's multiple passes on optimizing various aspects of the game. I think farming was the most recent one that really saw a big bump. And there's quite a few improvements to farming actually that I can get into. So one thing that we made much better in terms of farming AI is it runs smoother, so less performance costs, but it also has villagers actually anticipating where they're going to need to be, so they get into the fields and start tending to them before they actually have to start planting and harvesting. And what that means is that they're actually going to be in position and ready to do those tasks before they need to happen, which reduces the likelihood that something's going to rot or not get planted in time. And you can see they're getting over here, getting ready to plant now, and I bet some guys will start tending to fields after that. More animals. We'll get to more animals. Is this town on peaceful mode? You see no defense towers. There's definitely defense towers. I am playing on Vanquisher difficulty. This is an arid map. And you can see my barracks is fully stocked with what I call stormtroopers, which are my dudes decked out in all the best gear. Actually, no, they don't have crossbows, so they're not quite stormtroopers yet. But yeah, these guys are decked out. They're ready to defend my town. I haven't been raided yet so far during the stream, so we'll see. Well, books lead to higher education in university, for example. That seems like a pretty reasonable step in the future. But for now, it's schools for education. Any plans to change how workers get resources from warehouses and how goods are shared among warehouses? So yes, it's not coming this patch, but something we plan to do before 1.0 is to improve the logistics of how you manage where your resources go. So we're talking about adding essentially limits to how much of a certain resource is stored within a certain building to allow you to transfer resources between buildings. So you know that issue we've had pretty much since early access began with resources getting kind of stuck in limbo in the trading post. That is because we actually currently do not have a means of moving resources between storage. So when you transfer resources out of the trading post, they just kind of sit there invisible, but they are accessible to your town. What this addition will do is it'll actually have villagers moving stuff out of the trading post and into your town storage. And off of that, you will be able to do the same for your other storage buildings. Any plans for skin packs to change up the look of settlements? I think that would be a great idea. I think that would definitely be a post-release kind of thing. I can only wonder what kind of skins you guys would be interested in, though. So, kind of give us a mention on the forum, like what kind of aesthetic you're interested in. I know some people have mentioned fantasy. I could see that being a spin-off title, honestly. Any plans for new storage system, like making new type of storage for only specific resource? So you can actually do that already. If you ever go to one of your storage buildings, like this one, Stockyard, if you uncheck these boxes, you decide what gets stored in that building. So if you want this stockyard to be exclusive to firewood, you can uncheck everything else, and that building will only store firewood. Any plans to update villager UI or villager commands, other than you mentioned with farming? I guess they have to elaborate what you mean by that. Because you can manually command villagers to do a number of things already. mostly meant for combat though. More cosmetic items to beautify our towns would be great, like in Anno 1800. So that's actually a good segue into another thing that we're going to be working on very soon, maybe even for version 0.9, which is to officially support modding. Now, that's not going to be something that's just going to happen like in a snap, like, oh, modding's available now, like you can do whatever you want. Like, it's not quite that simple. We're going to have to go through a number of steps of actually exposing various aspects of the game to modders so you guys can hook into that and make the changes you want. But the first things that we are interested in doing as a first step to modding is to let you guys share seeds and map files, and to let you guys hook up decoration buildings. So if anyone is interested in making cool new decorations for your towns as a mod, that's going to be the first step on our modding journey. And we want to support that all the way through to 1.0 and beyond. Like, I realize, or we fully acknowledge that modding is very important to this kind of game, and we want to help you guys get that up and running. So up until now, there's been a lot of stuff on like Nexus mods and stuff that requires melon loader. We want to make it so a lot of things that you guys do want to modify will not require something like melon loader to work. And that'll be coming pretty soon. You think cemeteries can be moved. They can't be removed. But that brings us to yet another thing coming before 1.0. In order to facilitate towns that have been around for hundreds of years, those people that have made those towns might have noticed that your world is filling up with graveyards. Which makes sense, your villagers are dying over hundreds of years and they have to go somewhere. So to alleviate that problem, we will be introducing crypts, which will allow you to store hundreds of past villagers in their afterlife. What about low-tier production buildings that are kind of the bane of huge cities where you need 5 to 10 firewood splitters and shoemakers? I mean, that's kind of the balancing of the game, you know? Like, as your town grows, you need more of these services. Any plans to build a auto-lock gates during raids to prevent suicidal villagers, wagon drivers? Oh, I see. So it's not to keep the raiders out, it's to keep the villagers in. I see. If you ever have someone running out like that, you can actually manually control them. Does the game mainly focus on building? You have only 60 hours in the game and you know that sometimes raiders attack the base, but I wonder if it's also possible to send units and find some enemy base. Yet another segue into an upcoming feature, which will actually get into combat. So this isn't coming in version 0.9, but before 1.0, we plan to expand combat considerably. And what I mean by that is, let me show you actually a few pictures. Few things. We want to improve how you guys manage your guards and your soldiers. We're going to create a new sub-menu for the town center where you can manage all your soldiers, whether they're assigned to a building or not. So you actually be able to send your soldiers out on patrol to make sure that a road is clear of boars, for example, or if you anticipate an attack coming from a certain direction. And in addition to that, we're actually going to be adding new combat units. We're going to split the basic soldiers up into 2 types of infantry. There's going to be the standard melee soldier, and there will be archers, which means they'll actually be dedicated exclusively to firing arrows at your enemies. They'll also be able to hold more arrows as a consequence of that. But it's not going to be just that, because here at Crate Entertainment, we like to do more. And what we have coming up for our combat is we have some mounted infantry. Oh, wrong picture. I meant this one. So this isn't coming in version 0.9, but this is stuff that we're working on in preparation for version 1.0. We're going to greatly expand the combat system with new military units for both the player and the raiders. So while you will be able to bring lancers to the field, so will the raiders and invading armies. And that's not all, of course, because as I said, here we do more. And here we have the catapult. So those of you that like to build triple layer walls, you might be a little disappointed to find that might not work so well when they're bombarding you from a distance. However, you'll be able to do the same to them, and you'll be able to construct your own catapults. All of that will be coming in our greatly expanded combat system. And as someone mentioned earlier, could you send troops out to attack a raider base? That is another thing we actually want to do while expanding the combat stuff. We're going to have raider camps spawning out in the world that you will be able to attack, clear out, and pillage effectively to get your own loot. So once another treat for those that are interested in getting loot from raiders, you can go out there, beat the raiders up first, and get treasure from them. How does it feel to be looted now? You're doing thick boy walls. You only bought the game 3 days ago and you love it so much already. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying what there is. There's still so much to come. So, as you saw, we are adding horses, and you can't just add horsemen without the actual horses to back them up. So, that brings us to horses and other animals. Before version 1.0, we intend to add a number of new farm animals. Horses, of course. We would like to add chickens, and we want to add goats. Now, I know that's not going to cover bases for all the animals you guys might be interested in. I think some of that might just have to be saved for post-release, but these are the animals we want to commit to for the initial release. You'll never build a crypt. You've seen what goes on in crypts and Greats games. That is a fair point. If an ancient eldritch entity starts crawling out of your crypts, we are not responsible for that. You have almost 700 hours in the game so far. You always come back to it for a new patch. Can't wait for us to come. We've really got the game going in the right direction. Glad to hear it. Like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg in a way. Let's see, what did I not cover yet, actually? Let's see, we've covered the religion system. Someone just asked about religion. You want to attack with religion. So you want to convert the raiders? So it's like a aggressive conversion? You need sheep to flock, a sheep flock. Yeah, that would be pretty fun. And then you can turn the wool into clothes, and yeah, the whole thing. Like that's like a whole like production line, though. Nice thing about goats and chickens is they're actually pretty straightforward in terms of what we already have. So goats produce cheese, or well, I should say milk. They produce milk, which is considered as cheese, and chickens produce eggs, which I actually already have from foraging. Have you considered multiplayer in the far future, or this will be a single-player focused game entirely? The intent for Farthest Frontier was always and always will be a single-player game. Multiplayer for a game like this is something you really have to plan from the ground up. It's to retrofit it at this point would be a massive undertaking, and I'm not really even sure it would serve the game as well as some of you might think. I mean, I get the appeal of trying to build a town together or having like competing towns, but you really need the mechanics to support such an endeavor. Like if there's gonna be people waging wars against each other, like you need a whole system to support that. You need to build that up. You need to build the game around that. And I feel like that would take away from kind of enhancing the single player experience, which honestly is what most town builder players tend to be interested in. I'm not saying that there aren't multiplayer centric players, but for the most part people do just want that solo experience. How long are we planning to update the game with content after release? So that's kind of a tough to answer question. So that kind of depends on how well the game is doing, honestly. If the game is selling very well and people keep coming in and there's new players all the time, then it makes sense to keep supporting it, A, with free content and with DLCs. So I'm not going to say like we're going to commit to a year of updates, or we're going to commit to 2 years of updates. It's honestly hard to say at this point. But given how early access has gone so far, at this point I believe nearly 1 million of you have checked out the game, which is simply fantastic. Like 1 million is such a meaningful milestone for a game to reach, and we're already there, or almost there, in early access, which is just great. And based on the reviews, most of you are having a great time. And those of you that are not, I hope the issues you're having will be addressed in the future. Particularly one that comes up a lot is optimization, and we fully acknowledge that performance is not quite there yet, but this is why this is an early access game. And every update is going to have more improvements in that regard. We literally have one person on the team whose sole purpose is basically optimization. Like every day his check in like what he's working on. Is like, well, I'm optimizing the game. Like, yep, he is. Are we going to remove the 1,000 population limit? So potentially in version 0.9, but if not version 0.9, then the patch after that, we are going to raise that limit. We're going to have a new setting in the game options where you will be able to set your own population limit. So if you want to keep like a nice cozy small town and not have to worry about like overpopulation, like making it larger than you intend to, you'll actually be able to set that cap for yourself. Or if your PC is just kind of on the lower end, and you know you're not going to be able to handle a 1,000 population town even after optimization goes through, that's another thing you'll be able to do for performance reasons. So we're thinking just multiple settings for them, maybe like 200, 500, 800,000, but or disabled, so no population cap at all. There's sort of going to be a balance that will occur over time with your city where the amount of people dying will simply outnumber the amount of people coming in. So eventually there will kind of be a steady state your town reaches just naturally. I'm currently actually working, like this town specifically, this is a town I started a few weeks ago, and I'm literally playing it through completely legit to see how big of a population I can get it to. So I guess we'll see what the sort of soft cap will end up being. But the 1,000 population cap that we currently have for performance reasons is going to be lifted in the future. When can we expect the next major update? So I have really good news for you guys in that regard. So this stuff that I've been showing you for version 0.9 right now, all of that is coming into our public playtest today. So after this live stream, if you can opt into the playtest, the instructions are on our forum, and we're going to have a link to it on the dev blog that we're going to post later today. You'll be able to get into the playtest forum on our official forum, and you'll be able to opt into the playtest build, and you'll be able to start playing version 0.9 today. So religion system, paper stuff, a bunch of the optimization, other bug fixes, improvements that are coming in this patch, that's all going to be available for you guys today. And I'm kind of surprised that no one has mentioned this giant building right next to the town center that I've just got beautifully decorated. So this is actually the last part of our paper industry. So paper gets turned into books, which goes into libraries or homes. Another use for paper, however, is going to be in the guild hall. And this is another layer of agency we're going to give you guys in order to customize your town further. Oh, I still have horses right in the smack in the middle of the picture. That's why you guys aren't talking about this building, because there's a horse in front of it. Who put a horse picture there? Yes, we've got the guild hall. Now, you might be noticing a few things that stand out about this building. There's a whole lot of banners on it, and there's a whole bunch of guild masters working in it. I wanted to call them bureaucrats, but it seemed a little too on the nose. So these guys are filing paperwork, and they're increasing the efficiency of your town's industries. Now we've collected all the various means of production in your town into 7 of these. So we have the Armaments Guild, the Artisans Guild, the Clothiers Guild, Culinarians, Metallurgy, Miners, and Woodworkers. Now what these guys are going to do in here, they're going to consume paper, filing paperwork, to improve how efficient your industries are. And right now you can see I have it set to the Metallurgy Guild, and these banners here are actually reflecting that. So let's actually change it up. Let's go and change it to the Clothiers Guild. And now you can see the banners have changed. So you can only have 1 guild hall in your town, which means whatever you choose in this building is a major decision you're making for your industry. So if your town produces a lot of metal, you might want to have the Metallurgy Guild. If you have a ton of agriculture, maybe having the clothiers producing more clothes so you can trade them with the trading post might be a bit more profitable means for you. Can you seize the means of production? Well, kind of, a little bit. And how many guild workers you have, or sorry, guild masters you have in this building will determine how big this bonus gets. So I currently have 4. Since I'm playing on an aired map, farming is actually a bit of an effort, since there's, oh yeah, you actually see them tending fields here. So farming is a pretty limited thing I can do on this arid map because there's not a lot of farmable land, and as you can actually see, the environmental fertility factor is pretty low. So I'm not producing as much flax as I need to fully get this guild house up and running. But if actually, it might be okay now. I've got a stockpile of paper. So yeah, so paper mill, gonna produce paper. That's gonna go to the guild hall, and depending on how many guild masters you're working, you can increase the efficiency of your various industries. Karl Marx approves this message. Let's see. Did I miss something? You haven't played version 0.8 yet, but previously you've seen several times that when you're putting a building in a certain place, and let's say next to it someone cuts wood, after cutting down the tree he carried the wood to storage instead of immediately to the construction site. Is this a deliberate approach? So that is just how the AI handles things. Like guys that are harvesting resources are going to put them in storage, and then builders are the ones that are actually grabbing resources to bring them to build sites. So these guys are fulfilling different roles. Have we been working in the iron production chain? It feels unbalanced. Unbalanced in what way, I guess I should ask. Can you later send people from the graveyard to the crypt? That's a good question. We haven't finalized how the crypt will work exactly. That might be something we should consider, just letting you empty out a graveyard if you really want to. Have you plans to change the environmental fertility message? It is not very visible. So you're talking about this thing here. It's not very visible on the crop field UI, but when you're actually making a new crop field, it is right there in the tooltip. So environmental fertility factor is 30% in this space here. Can you build more than one town in the same map? You can't literally make multiple town centers if that's what you're asking. But I have seen people building smaller settlements outside of their main town. So if you have like a mining area that you want to populate, you can actually build houses around there, and the guys that are working the mines will move into those homes. Will there be more options for defense? So I guess you might have just come in late. So I've actually covered that a little bit. There's a pretty major combat update coming up. So I'm not going to go into everything that I just said again because people that have already listening heard it all. But there's going to be everything I've said today is going to be up on YouTube. And then we're going to have a big blog post coming up right after this. They'll go into details. But there will be new defensive buildings, there will be new combat units, and a new way to control your soldiers. Yeah, my coworkers are messaging me that horses were still up. See, I haven't been paying attention to them. Whoops. This is how you can tell I'm an amateur streamer, because I just left horses up on the screen for like 10 minutes straight. Would be cool if you can update the way outposts work. Currently, villagers go back to their main town for sleep or even food when they have everything available in the mining outpost. So you're talking about like temp shelters and stuff. So as I mentioned earlier, if you do build houses around that area, you can actually have them living permanently in that region. Any plan changes for red hunters? No plan changes at this time. What changes would you be expecting, I guess, is the question. In the main cutscene of the game, when you start a new world, greedy kings are mentioned, and he plans to expand on the king part. Maybe add a feature where you could work with the kings of the further lands. It's interesting that you caught on to that. It's kind of an original concept. Frontier is kind of set in this situation where external rulers might be applying pressure onto you. That's kind of where invading armies come into play a little bit. I'm not sure how much we'll expend on that in by version 1, but I can see doing more of that in the future. Will horses only be used for military and agricultural, or will equestrian and dressage be available? Probably not in the initial setup for horses. Yeah, for initial, it'll be military and agriculture. Is there a roadmap for the game? We can see to get a sense of what is the plan for the game. So that's literally what this stream actually is today. And as I mentioned, there's going to be a blog post detailing everything I'm talking about today and more. And I will mention that that's actually not going to be 100% everything we are planning for 1.0. So we actually still have a few surprises left in store for you. But if you are eager to see kind of what's coming up imminently, as in later today, and in the future, this is kind of what we're talking about today. Is a minimap coming? A minimap is on the list somewhere in there. I'm not sure if we're going to get to it by 1.0. We'll see. So I'm not going to say like we're totally doing a minimap right now. Will performance issues be addressed? Yes. So performance is an ongoing effort. Every patch is going to improve in performance, including this next one. Will there be options to sell cows at any point? We don't have plans to make cows tradable at this time. Maybe later, we'll see. So some people asked earlier how long early access will be. And you might remember from when we first announced early access and what's currently up on Steam, that we said that we expect early access to last 8 to 12 months. In our interest of doing more, because that's how it always ends up being for us, people familiar with Grim Dawn can attest, we are going to extend early access. We expect it probably is going to be another 8 to 12 months, or probably 6 to 10 months from now. So 1.0 expected early to mid 2024. And if we should pass that date, we'll see. But we do, it's going to be because we added even more to this game, because that's how we do. A million of you have entrusted us during early access, and we want to show you that that trust is well earned. We're going to make this game way bigger than we originally planned, and you guys are going to reap the benefits. Is there an easy difficulty with any worse conditions, raiders, bad conditions, such as a SimCity playthrough? Yeah, you can turn on the lowest difficulty, and you can turn on pacifist mode, which turns off a lot of the more challenging negative ailments in the game. Alright, yep. Covered that stuff. Is there going to be a new playtest code? The one on the forum is no longer valid. So the reason the one on the forum is no longer valid is because playtest is currently shut down. But as I mentioned, as soon as this stream's over, we're going to put that playtest right back up. All the old information will still work. If you had opted in before, you might have to opt in again, but the process is otherwise exactly the same. Great game, great game. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it, honestly. That's hearing people during early access be satisfied with the game as it is now is very uplifting for us and the team to hear, because we know that the foundation is good and we can only build up on it and make it even better. Post-release, do you plan to update the game regularly with DLCs? For example, a water-themed DLC like I mentioned earlier. So exactly like that. So I think a water theme is a perfect example of what an ideal DLC would be for this game. As for what would be beyond that, not really ready to talk about that yet today. But absolutely, like I think DLCs just make sense. Expanding on the game, adding more buildings for you, more decorations, more options to just make your towns awesome. Opposite question, are we planning to make the game more difficult? Current desert map is just too easy of abundance of ores. You just rush tier 2 and buy everything you need from the traders. That's fair, but that's kind of the trade-off of having the arid maps, is that you do have more of those ore resources, and then you do have to trade. Some people honestly just don't like trading, and they don't want to do it, so that's kind of where the other end of the spectrum is. People that are playing on idyllic maps don't need to worry about that as much. But the difficulty is actually a little harder this patch. The environment factor for the soil on arid maps is much more harsh now. So planting and growing crops on arid maps is going to be more difficult, which means that all that trading you're doing will actually be that much more important to keep your arid maps going. Types of government. Well, at least you've guild halls for now. I don't know about types of government at this time. Maybe that might make sense as like a post-release thing too, like a civics patch. Or a DLC. Add dragons defending treasures. So that's another example of where a fantasy theme might make sense, but that seems like more of a spin-off than like a skin pack. Any updates for traders, like trader invite with X type of resource for extra cost? That is something we'd like to do. We'll see if it makes it for 1.0, but given how sometimes you really need clay, or you really need cows, or heavy tools, being able to request that at like a premium might make sense. Do we plan on adding a map editor for the game? Is this something that you envision to come from the modding scene? I think that'd be more in the domain of mods. For the main game, like we built the game around the randomized map system. So we ourselves do not have a tool for building maps because we didn't make the game with that in mind. So why don't we switch some of my relics around? So if you guys are coming in late, The religion system is coming. Spirituality is going to be a major new feature in the game. I've got my temple over here with a few relics already selected. We've got the Temple of Twitch. And why don't we change up some of my relics here? So when you switch out a relic, you're actually going to put that slot on cooldown. So now I've switched it out so my birth rate and the health of villagers is increased by 10%. And I cannot switch this relic slot out for 6 months. So all you guys that might have been planning to min-max and switch everything to combat relics right before raid shows up, you'll be able to do that, but for the next 6 months you will continue to have those military relics assigned. We consider adding an option for farming, moving herbs or medical roots and straw. Feeling a bit bad having to use forager shacks well into tier 4 towns. An option to move them would feel great. We wanted to maintain that aspect of the game where foraging is still relevant throughout the game. So no, we don't have plans to make those farmable. But you can trade for them if you really want to. Will there be intermap warring? I'm not sure that's likely, because then we would have to create like a whole kind of meta game to it. I mean, I'm not gonna say never say never, but at this time we do not have a plan for something like that, especially not for 1.0. That's just too big of a mechanical change. And no, we are not planning a PS5 port at this time. Any new mining resources like silver, titanium, or sulfur for producing a pounder? I think that would be stuff that we could revisit post-release. Like, you're mentioning silver, like silver and gold could be resources that could be used, for example, a jeweler, which could be another luxury good. Plague doctors, like the weird masked guys walking around your houses. That'd be kind of fun. If you've ever clicked on a healer's house, though, you might notice them selling snake oil. Fun little fact. Upgrade the temple. Oh, I totally can. Let's do it. Let's get that tier 2 temple up. Raid controls really be a nice QL addition. Ability to toggle the village to combat mode. You do not go outside. Hotkey you could hold so when selecting villagers or grab soldiers. Or only guards or only villagers. So, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the combat update stuff. What we plan to do is actually add new buttons on the HUD. Where you'll be able to select all melee soldiers, all ranged soldiers, cavalry, or all combat units. So exactly what you're describing, where you kind of select just soldier units, that's exactly what that's going to be for superior unit management. Because combat is honestly a pretty meaningful part of Farthest Frontier, and we want to build on that. Unless you're playing on pacifist mode. In that case, don't worry about it. Will we have natural disasters like earthquakes and mudslides and drought? I think expanding on the kind of the heat waves and blizzards and stuff would be pretty cool, especially for crops. But in terms of like earthquakes and mudslides and stuff, we weren't planning on doing natural disasters like that. Am I the main guy in the game who decides on the game features? So you're thinking of Madeira Arthur Bruno, who is the founder of the company. So he is the lead designer on the project. I actually came on from the Grim Dawn team to help out on Farthest Frontier a few years ago, and I am the producer on the team. So while I don't decide what features make it into the game, I do help out in terms of what order they go in. So and on top of that, since I am the guy who's interacting with you guys on the forums a lot, that means it's kind of like a direct path into what gets prioritized. So if I've seen you guys talking about religion so much. I've seen you guys talking about horses a lot. So it's like, okay, I think people want these things. Let's make that happen. There's no multiple layers you have to get through to get to the people making those decisions. When we take our army to conquer other towns, can we eventually topple the whole kingdom and take the head of the king? See, that's kind of the whole meta map that I've mentioned earlier. I'm not sure that would really make sense for 1.0. Someone get this guy a raise. Well, thank you. You almost feel obliged to ask, can we add saunas? I'm not sure that's going to be a top priority. But it'd be kind of fun. You heard him, modders. New decorative building. That needs to come in. We need saunas. Maybe a bathhouse. Yeah, not that'd be cool. Like to improve health. Yeah. New tech. Villagers washing hands. Did lightning almost just strike the temple? I think that's divine intervention. Any plans for water storage? Water towers, tanks. We actually have talked about doing things like water towers, cisterns. That might be something we squeeze in for 1.0. We'll see. Have we considered adding Steam Workshop for easier access to mods? So if you might have joined us a little late. I did actually mention that specifically. We do plan to start supporting modding in either version 0.9 or the one following that. But that's going to be an ongoing process. And Steam Workshop support is one of the things we want to incorporate first. So ability to share seeds, ability to share map saves, and the ability for you guys to start incorporating your own decorations. That's going to be the first step of supporting modding. Need brothels in the game. I can certainly see why some of you would really want that, and I can certainly see why some of you would really not want that in the game. We've convinced you. You'll pick it up for a few hours today. That's fair. That's fair. Any idea when improved logistics will be available? So that's not coming in version 0.9. That's still actively in development. So that's going to be closer to the full 1.0 release. Either this fall or next winter. Or next winter, this winter. Any plans for more streams? Any plans for more streams? I think more streams would be fun. Whenever we have something to show you guys, I think I absolutely should show up here and let you guys ask me questions. This was obviously a big opportunity to show you a lot of new things, so we definitely want to do a stream for this. When the next one will be, I don't know. I mean, kind of bring it up on the forums. Like, what do you guys want to see us do in a stream? Do you want to just have me build a town for a bit and chat? I mean, we can probably arrange that, just so you guys can ask me more questions. Can we upgrade a school to a college or university? I think a university would make sense down the line. Yeah, I think we have some other things in mind for books too that we're not ready to talk about today. What version are we going to enable modding? So that'll be either version 0.9 or the patch after that. Just 192 more stone. Come on, guys. Will there be opportunity to customize keyboard shortcuts? For example, through delete, you can delete a building, but you can't delete a building that you just laid down to build, and you have to press the icon. Oh, interesting. So, like, if you have a build site, you can't delete it? We'll have to look into that. That should honestly just work. Apothecary / doctor being able to sell psychedelic enhancing the troops. Well, like cocaine for the soldiers. I think they'll actually get us rated M these days. We would like a whole stream dedicated to my workday. To my workday? Honestly, you probably would not enjoy watching a stream of my workday, because there's a lot of spreadsheets involved. And way more emails than I'd like to answer. Like, basically when I'm not doing the Frontier production stuff, I'm getting rated. I'm also working on the Grim Dawn side of things, where I do a lot of the balancing. So my screen is just covered in spreadsheets most of the time. So not the most exciting thing to look at, I'm afraid. Where's this raid coming from? Over here. Alright, let's get the troops out. Will we add underground sewers and criminals using them? I'm not sure how we would do sewers at this point. We'd have to have like some sort of like underground overlay. But like a crime and punishment system would be a pretty cool DLC. I think that would be a great addition. Game looks amazing. Any thoughts of a GD tie-in DLC featuring the Chthonic Coven uprising and ethereal issues stemming from graveyards, taking our town to the cusp of the Grim Dawn? I think a Grim Dawn skin would be pretty fun. I don't think that would make sense as like the official track. Although if you look at some of the relics I've shown you today, there are some hints of GD stuff. And there's always Score of our lovable merchant who brings all the freshest meats. Will villagers pick the nearest house to their workplace? Can you make production-themed districts? Yes, you absolutely can, and villagers do, in fact, pick the closest place to live to their work. So let's see, do we have any guys working here? Yeah, so we have a weaver, and my weaver is actually right there. So yeah, she's living pretty much down the street. Yeah, get out of here. Look at that. Look at that. Look at this pile. They cleaned house. You like playing spreadsheets with fancy graphics? I should hire you for emails and spreadsheets. But I like the spreadsheets. You can't take the spreadsheets away from me. That's like my favorite part. I say it's boring because it looks boring. It's not boring to me. You're asking questions on behalf of Raptor. He is streaming this live. Well, hello, Raptor. Thanks for all the streaming you've done before, and I'm glad you're streaming again. Will there be an upgrade for distillery? More booze. I think a winery would make sense someday. I'm not sure it would make 1.0, but having like grapes and ability to make wine would be pretty fun. Beautiful game. 2,000 hours in Grim Dawn. We have a long way to go to catch up time played. You love that Crate still makes games for gamers. Thanks for all you do. That's honestly the whole point of this company, is that we are making the games we like to play. We like action RPGs. We made an action RPG. We like town builders. We're working on a town builder. We love RTS games. We're working on an RTS game next. We have some other things that are also in development that we're going to talk about another time. So that's what we do here. We make the games we like to play, which means we're playing these games. We are intimately involved in making these games fun to play because we like playing them. Are we planning a map editor? So someone asked earlier, a map editor was not something we built the game around. Map generation is random. So we actually don't have a map editor like for our own tools. Is this our own engine? It looks so nice. So this is built on Unity. But I mean, the game looking nice is ultimately the assets, and for that you can thank our very talented artists, who I'm sure are hearing this and beaming with pride. Any similar games like this in development? So in terms of what we have in development internally, the closest thing to this would be the RTS. But in terms of town builders, like this is the one town builder we're working on. Whether we do spin-offs in the future, kind of built upon the foundation of Frontier, we'll see. That would be kind of fun. Like I mentioned, a fantasy-themed one might be appealing to people. It's kind of like more mythical creatures in the woods. Like we kind of always joke that if you go into the fog of war at the edge of the map, the Wendigos eat you. Maybe that could be a real thing in a spin-off. Grim Dawn 2 when? Oh man, Grim Dawn 2. So, Grim Dawn 2 is not currently in development. However, we are working on a new proprietary engine internally, which we plan to use for many of our future titles. And the Grim Dawn themed RTS is going to be the first game that uses that engine. Please don't go full corporate. Keep the magic alive. We'll do it as long as we can. How many new buildings are there? Let's see. So in this patch, we're talking paper mill, bookbinder, guild hall, library. Shrines got remade or repurposed, I should say. And there's the temple. There's the tier 2 temple, and then there's the ruins. And that's just for version 0.9. Any graphical improvements coming? Graphical improvements? I mean, what are you hoping to improve? This game looks great already. The crypts I mentioned earlier, will there be an upgrade to the current graveyards or complete standalone building? So we haven't finalized exactly how that's going to work. Two options we're considering is that it's going to be a standalone building you build outside of a graveyard, or alternatively what we might do is that it's a building you put inside of a graveyard as kind of like an upgrade. Did I say Wendy's? No, I don't think so. Glad the kids aren't in the house right now, because if I said Wendy's out loud, they'd be like, for dinner? Would it make sense to also connect some production lines? For example, to make a wagon, we need cows first. While that would make sense mechanically and thematically, there's some things that are just worthy kind of shoving aside as a gameism, and just to have wagons up and running, I think is more important than having to first trade for them, because currently to get cows you need to have a barn. So you would need a barn to be able to get the wagon shop, and to get the wagon shop you need it before you can even make work camps and mines and all this other stuff. So a lot of things are depending on the wagons existing. So I would say it would be kind of frustrating that you have to wait for a cow first before you can even get a wagon up. No Grim Dawn 2 feels bad, man. I didn't say no Grim Dawn 2, I just said no Grim Dawn 2 right now. However, if you're here from our Grim Dawn community, I promise you, in the future later this year, I'm going to have some wonderful goodies for you to explore. So stay tuned. We'll probably do a live stream for Grim Dawn in a few weeks or months, where I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up. And I promise you, you guys will love it. Sorry you missed this, but crypts merely more space or infinite space? It'll probably be just a lot more space. So like a crypt might hold like, 500 people in like a 2x2 or 3x3 area. So technically, I guess if you run your town for 10,000 years, maybe you'll run out of room with all these crypts, but crypts should last you a really, really long time. Any plans to zoom out more than currently in order to see more on larger maps? We do not have plans to increase the zoom. That is done for performance reasons. We accept that some of you don't care if your frame rate drops to 1, but a lot of people do. So the the zoom is locked at this zoom level, and we don't have plans to change that. However, there are mods. Mods will be more supported very soon. So in an indirect way, if you really want more zoom, there will be a means to doing that. But just be aware that more zoom does mean lower frame rate. How much individuality do villagers have? Do they have individual inherited traits or professions? So given how big towns can get in Frontier, the thought of micromanaging villagers based on their traits and professions was just overwhelming to think about. So the idea of like telling 1,000 people where to go specifically because like, oh, well, he's a better blacksmith, but he's a better miner, so you better get these guys in the right jobs. That just seemed like way too much micromanagement, so we opted not to go into such detailed depth. However, for like a town builder that has smaller towns, I do see how that makes sense, and that is pretty appealing. Like oxygen not included. I love doing that in oxygen not included, but my colonies in that game are like 100 people max, and then I run out of steam. So can we raise an undead army from the crypt? I absolutely hope we'll be able to raise an undead army from the crypt. Probably not. Not initially. Not for the non-fantasy version. Where will we build higher catapults and horse knight lances, barracks, or a new building? So what will most likely happen for that is, so the new controls we're going to add to the town center, so it'll be like a new tab here. You will be able to select that and manage your troops. So if you want to hire archers or infantry or lancers or catapults, like that'll all be handled from here. However, which ones you can recruit will be based on what buildings you have. So you can't build infantry until you have a barracks. You can't build lancers until you have horses, things like that. For large maps, I would advise to add some keyboard shortcuts to focus on assigned places. Well, good news for you, because we have that, and it's actually been in the game all along. So save camera position 1 through 3, these controls right over here, that's what you're looking for. Got a weird question that's always been on your mind. How do we come up with the name for the villagers? Were they randomly generated? Did someone actually come up with all of them? I think they were actually all manually entered. I wasn't involved in that process. But yeah, all those are manually entered. I think there's there's a town name that sounds vaguely like my online handle. And that was not my doing, I swear. This is probably already asked, will the population cap be increased? So yes. The population cap will be lifted in the near future, whether version 0.9 or a version after that. You will be able to set your own population cap after that. So if you want a smaller town, you'll actually be able to shrink the population cap if you want. The important question is, can we have our Rohirrim ride to Gondor for aid? Well, no, until we implement the mountain braziers. So, I mean, we gotta do things in the right order, right? I mean, they can't call for aid until there's braziers to call for aid with. And then we're gonna need to have orcs to actually attack Gondor in the first place. Like, it's you know, there's multiple stages of development before we can have the Rohirrim. How will horses be acquired? Can we trade horses? Can horses take carts around? So horses will be acquired just like cows through the trading post. I don't know if you've commented any crematorium building to have apart from the cemetery. So we're adding crypts. Crematorium has been actually something we've considered. I'm not sure if we're going to do both, but crypts are definitely happening. Crematoriums might be happening. Any plans to take features from Frostpunk 2 and add it to Farthest Frontier? Let's be real here. Frostpunk 2 is going to have some awesome features. I loved Frostpunk. I haven't really looked into what Frostpunk 2 is doing that's different. I mean, I'm going to pick that game up no matter what. But, yeah, I mean, if you have some ideas that Frostpunk 2 is doing that you think would be a great addition for us, I mean, that's something to mention on the forum, honestly. Like, we are reading the forums. I try to read every post that you guys are posting, within reason. I mean, I sometimes only have 5 seconds here and there to do it, but I do try to read your feedback, and I do keep that feedback in mind. This is how we're able to tell, like, well, people are really interested in getting religion into the game. There's a lot of people talking about that. That's how we know, because you guys are posting on the forum. You're leaving your feedback. You are impacting where the game is headed with your input. What happens if you have a large population, you set the limit lower? Will they be slaughtered, making hats out of their skins? No, if you change the limit retroactively, the population will just stop growing and stagnate until the villagers just naturally die off and the population levels off to the setting you set. Is there plans for a blueprint mode or ready to place building foundations or construction disabled by default? I see what you mean, like kind of like a pre-planning. Oh my god, I just realized that we haven't finished this temple because I'm low on 9 stone. Here, let's get some stone mined. Like I said, amateur streamer. Right, the question about blueprint mode. I think that'd be cool. I can see why you'd want it. I'm kind of just used to the idea of knowing what buildings I'm going to need and where. So like when I was building this town, I left a space here for this theater. So I kind of plan ahead. And that's something I enjoy myself. I can see why people might want blueprints for that purpose. So I'm not going to promise that it's going to happen, but I do see the appeal. Will I be able to add a Grim Dawn character as a hero defender? Maybe in the Grim Dawn spin-off. Will you be able to breed horses? Will there be mercenaries? So just like cows, you'll be able to raise horses, and yeah, so you'll be able to multiply them that way. And in terms of mercenaries, probably not, at least maybe not initially. I can see why that would be pretty cool though, to have like a real mercenary band you can temporarily control. Was the library always an internal idea, or did it come from the forums? Let me try to think how the library came to be. I think that was something actually that was kind of always in the, like, churning in the background. Like we wanted to do the paper industry so we could have books, which would lead to other things. And that was and libraries just kind of emerged as a natural progression off of that. Like, oh, well, we're going to have books, they should have libraries so they can provide entertainment. Come on, get those last few stones. Now, the guild hall was something that we didn't have originally planned. Like, one thing that we were kind of tossing around long ago was actually to have, like, engineers or something else, like educated workers you could assign to buildings to boost production in just those buildings, but over time they kind of evolved into the guild hall. And really, like, the religion system, the guild hall, some of the other things that are still in the way. That's all coming about because you guys wanted more ways to play. You guys wanted more agency over how you develop your town. And that is how we went about developing these features. We're like, how can we give you guys interesting new choices? And there it is, Tier 2 Temple. Pretty badass. I think it might actually be the tallest building in the game. Have you thought about expanding the graveyard system, like having grave robbers who rob graves at night and then the graves disappear and opens up space, or having people decide before death to donate their bodies to hospitals and universities for research? So having donations to hospitals and universities would be pretty like advanced approach to that, but If there's a grave robbers, that might be an interesting thing to do if we end up doing like a crime and punishment system down the line. Having grave robbers would make sense as one of the crimes that's committed. Oh, now that I have a tier 2 temple, actually, let me get my third priest in here, and now I can assign multiple relics. So let's get this one in here, let's get this one in here. So actually, I'm surprised that these refresh when I upgraded temples, so we'll have to get that fixed. Because that should have, at least the first two should have stayed assigned. It would be cool if you could make your own mercenary group and lend them to others. So that's more like meta map stuff. Is there a general formula for the number of raiders and battering rams? You've heard about 20 to 25%, and rams are based on the amount of gold in the vault. So it's not based on the amount of gold you have. I will tell you that. Population does play into it. Population and how much time has elapsed. So raids do get tougher over time. Will religions have options to deal with evil villagers like witch courts? So like the Salem trials? Pretty appropriate for given where we are. That would kind of fit more into the crime and punishment stuff again. Can you only build one grand temple per town? That's correct, one temple. So one major building for the town. But if you want to support spirituality in other parts of your town, that's where the shrines come into play. Any plans to expand the wall system? Circular diagonal walls. I do really want to get diagonal walls into the game before version 1. Circular walls, or spline walls as they're known, are probably not going to happen. Like, spline roads are doable because they don't alter pathing, but spline walls are a whole different can of worms, I'm afraid. But diagonal walls should be pretty doable. I'm sure the programmer that's listening to the stream right now is cursing me saying that it's pretty doable, because he's gonna have to do it, I'm just saying it. But I think we should do it. Thanks for answering the last question. Is there any plans to add more narrative features like a backstory for the raiders or quest narrative goals, etc., like a plague spreading to nearby lands? Have 5 healers total within 2 years to avoid disaster. So we wanted to keep the narrative pretty light. That's kind of where the intro cinematic comes in. Like, it's a vague statement of why your people moved out into the frontier, but what happens after that is kind of up to you. So we didn't want to kind of push a story onto you. Like, the story of your town is yours. Eye of Dreeg relic. It's not an Eye of Dreeg relic, but it's actually based on the Manticore Eye from Grim Dawn. Funny you should say that. Any plans for sewer waste management? So for current plans, we have the compost yard. We are not planning any other waste management at this point. Like, post-release, we'll see. If you take another look at walls, can we have the ability to mount archer's crossbow on the walls during a raid? That would be really cool. That would be really cool, but super complicated. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about again in terms of pathing. Like, if we had a wall that you could step on top of, like, that completely changes how pathing is managed. Maybe you missed it, but is there an ETA on this patch coming out? Really excited to play it. Well, I have really good news for you, because this patch is going into playtest right after this stream. So as soon as we're done here, we're going to set that thing live, and you guys are going to be able to hop right in, check out a religion system. So I will mention this. If you are playing on an existing map, the map will not be retroactively populated by ruins. So if you want the ruins part of the religion system, you will need to start a new map. However, you will still be able to buy relics from the trading post. You will still be able to acquire relics from raider kills. But the fastest way to get relics is through excavating. So I would recommend for anyone that's checking out 0.9 to start a new town. Can we combine archer towers with walls in the future? We don't have plans to do that. I honestly don't know if you'd want to, because then the raiders would just pick those towers off and then go right in. Whereas with the current setup, you actually have walls that they have to get through first, and then they have to break the tower. So it's strategically superior with the way it is right now. Any plans for higher tier houses? Heard that tier 5 houses are coming. You love that about Caesar 3, and you're having many tiers of houses to upgrade through. Yes, so tier 5 houses are another thing that's coming for version 1.0. We've actually mentioned it a long time ago in terms of like long-term plans that we have. That will be the final tier for version 1. And so spices and potentially books will be some of the luxury goods that your villagers will need to progress to tier 5. Last Farthest Frontier stream you watched, changes to the starting wagon were mentioned. Any news on that? So I don't have anything to announce regarding that yet. We do want to have you be able to turn that wagon into something. The idea I'm floating around in my head is to be able to commemorate your town by making a monument. Whether that's what we end up going with, we'll see. But something, I feel like something definitely should be done with it, because then you're like in this beautiful tier 4 town, and there's still this old wagon that your people came in all those years ago. Any plans for more of a class system in regards to some house upgrades, and some you maybe don't want to upgrade? Oh, so like preventing houses from upgrading. We didn't have plans for something like that currently. I mean, I guess I can see why you'd want that. You can, however, pause automatic upgrades. However, that would be across the whole town. Quicker day-night cycle, an option for that. No plans for day-night cycle setting at this time. So currently the way the game works is that it gets much darker during the winter. That's kind of the night cycle of the game. Like, it doesn't have a day-night cycle like over and over, because honestly a day in the game is like a second, so it'd be like day-night, 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 day-night. Thanks for answers and live stream. It's awesome to hear you guys are making games you love to play. It's so refreshing to see devs actively play and enjoy their games. A great motivator, keeps striving for improving the game too. It absolutely is. Like, seeing you guys react positively or negatively to things we're doing does give us motivation to, you know, keep growing the game and making it better. Will we implement celebrations with fireworks and such? I think some sort of like festival system would be pretty fun. I'm not sure that would be a 1.0 feature though, maybe post-release. To have like a festival grounds, or like even using the festival pole potentially, to have like just, you know, celebrations, like a harvest festival or something that can like temporarily boost, you know, agriculture for a bit. Or having some, you know, like a spring festival where villagers are just like celebrating because winter's over, and that just boosts happiness for a while. Could modders make guns? I mean, I guess I don't see why modders couldn't, because that's the kind of stuff you could certainly inject into the game. Will we expand metallurgy a little? Copper, nickel, steel, gemstones. So I think if we do something like jewelers or something in the future, I think that would make sense to expand metallurgy. So like copper jewelry, silver jewelry, gold jewelry, gemstones for jewelry. Like that would make sense like a new luxury item. Thanks to your team for Grim Dawn. You're welcome. And if you're here from Grim Dawn, more things to come. Stay tuned. Am I out of flax? Wow. Wow, I need to make more flax in this town. My paper industry is collapsing. With the storage changes coming, we'll be able to load up the wagon of building materials and settle distant outposts. You can kind of do that already, I suppose. And using the upcoming resource management, I suppose you would be able to do that if you really wanted to. Will we progress into new eras? We do not have plans to make like an era system at this time. Like, you're talking about like progressing like to the modern age or something. That's not likely. This game was always meant to be sort of set in this era. Please send a way to destroy boar spawns. That is something we want to address in the future. Make it easier to remove those pesky boars if you really want to. Why Unity Engine versus Unreal Engine when making this game? Honestly, I don't remember anymore. It's been so many years. Part of it might have actually just been the royalties. The fact that Unreal is built more for supporting first-person, third-person kind of games. Like, to make a, you know, zoomed-out game like this in Unreal is not exactly the thing it's meant for. I mean, you can do it, but it would have been a lot of upfront work. Please make a new cosmetic DLC. You want to throw money at us. If you're talking about Grim Dawn, then I hear you. I hear you very well. That's all I'll say about that. Without boar spawns, wouldn't it be boring? You would be correct. It would be boring. When you play, building conditions going down, but you can't repair them. So if you're having issues repairing your town, first off, make sure you have enough builders, and make sure that you have enough resources to do the repairs. So if you ever click on a building that's damaged, so for example, these are at 94% structural integrity, so these actually don't require any materials yet. Let's see if we have something lower. There we go. So this manor is at 69% structural integrity. It requires 4 gold ingots, 1 brick, 1 wood plank. So if you have those materials in stock, and this building goes below 70%, someone's eventually going to come around and fix it automatically. So you actually don't have to do anything for repairs as long as you're maintaining enough builders and enough resources for your town. Have you ever thought about adding a king or a mayor type of authority figure, maybe elections or something? Or is this something that goes against the initial idea for this frontier, having escaped the previous king of oppression to establish a new colony? So it's kind of funny that you talk about like escaping oppression, because a lot of the times in my town, sometimes I end up having like an offshoot of my village that's not as well developed, and I haven't had the chance to build walls around it yet, and it ends up getting wrecked by raiders, and I'm kind of like, I'll fix it later. It's not that expensive to rebuild it, it's just a bunch of tier 1 homes, and that's literally what they left in the first place. So I'm just repeating the cycle. In terms of having like kings and stuff or mayors, I think that might make sense if we do like a civic update of some kind, maybe as a DLC or a post-release feature. You need laborers built. Yeah, right. Imagine trying to optimize the game code of a game and adding new content at the same time is tricky. I mean, it kind of depends on what the new content you're adding is. And it's in terms of adding any new feature, regardless of optimization or not, you always have to be mindful of what already exists before you add something new, because anything you change could affect something that already works. So like, if you might break fishing because you added something that affects, you know, shorelines in some way. Like you have to be mindful of that when you're working in the code, and that's why it takes people that have been working in the code for a long time to be aware of those pitfalls. Sorry if this isn't asked before, but any plans for a campaign or scenarios? So this has always been intended to be a sandbox, so we are not planning to do any sort of like campaign mode or anything like that. Any plans of adding extra animals like foxes, beavers, etc.? Isn't there like a whole game about beavers already? Like, aren't we just gonna kind of get on their turf if we had beavers? But foxes would be cool. I think having more wildlife just to make the forest seem more alive would be really cool. In terms of 1.0 features, the animals we are adding are going to be the domesticated kind, which is chickens, horses, and goats. We're not adding more wild animals at this time, but down the line it might make sense. Seeing some foxes would be cool. Will there be more traders, and what will they bring to the city? I think more traders in the future would make sense. Since we are not adding many more resources for the base game, I don't think it makes sense to add more traders right now. But in the future, yeah, I can see adding more traders. One thing you miss in the game is the possibility of trade with another city, maybe even use your army to raid other camps. So I will mention that raider camps will start spawning out in the wilderness in a future update, but we're not talking about like a meta map system yet. Let's see if we have a trader, to see if he has a relic. Good old Scorvin, what does he have? He has the Antlers of the Great Spirit, which I'm sure has absolutely nothing to do with anything that has ever happened in Grim Dawn. Completely unrelated. Great Spirit, very, very cool guy, very nice, lots of fresh meat. Yep. You notice upgrade the trading post to tier 2. The traders didn't have all that much gold with them, or when you want to sell to them, any plans for more beefed up late game traders that have more gold on hand so you can sell more to them? The tier 2 traders do have more gold, I will say, but part of it is also just like you buy stuff from them and then they have more gold to sell the stuff that you don't need. So it's a trade. The tavern will be upgraded in the future, maybe cake with egg, milk, and other for restaurant, hotel room. I think like a bakery with like luxury baked goods would be kind of cool. Not a 1.0 feature probably. A treasure hunter house. So like more exploration stuff. I could see it expanding on exploration in the future, yeah. Because like making exploring the world more fun, I think is great. So like that's where the ruins came into play. Like that already has made exploring the map way more interesting just by virtue of like, well, I want to find some more relics. Having those raider camps are gonna have that effect too. We'll be able to name features in the world. Example, add names to lakes, roads, pubs, city gates, etc. I think if we had some sort of like overlay map that you could see, that would make sense. But as it is right now, I'm not sure that makes the most sense. Can lakes be repopulated with fish? So if your fishermen are showing that there's no more fish, that means you have way too many fishermen on that body of water. But if you reduce the amount of fishermen and give it time, fish do repopulate. What do relic colors mean? So relics come in different categories. So there is the, let's see, so this is the, I think, prophet relics. Man, I'm forgetting what they were called. I thought we had these names somewhere in the game. Maybe we should fix that so you can actually see what the relic names are. Yes, it was prophet, it was martyr, and the last one was like not old gods. Shoot, what was it called? I'm forgetting. But yeah, these are different themes that the relics fit. Potentially new themes in the future, but these are the three we're shipping with. Raptor said I have his authorization to add him as a character in the game. Let's see who we got here. You. No, that's a girl. There we go. Totally looks like a raptor, right? Absolutely. Just missing the sunglasses. Otherwise, striking image of raptor. There we go. Raptor is now forever in my villager name list. Here we go. All Raptorius sending you their live. Well, thank you guys. Like I've said before, like we really appreciate the attention that Raptor's stream has given us in the game and just the positive coverage that we've gotten from it. It's been great, and I mean, honestly, we're glad that they're enjoying it. Have you considered the idea of being able to establish a new town, having to develop it separately from your main town, eventually establish trade between them? So that's another example of what would be like a meta map, like meta gaming, like interconnected settlements, like other enemy settlements. Like that's not something we're planning for 1.0. I think if we, I'm being informed. It's martyr, warrior, and wilds. So the third category is wilds, not nature. But in terms of the metagame features I was saying, like that would be something that would be a pretty major addition and maybe post-release, something we can discuss then. A mini-map plan, like a mini-map is something that would probably make sense to add. I'm not sure when we're gonna get that in, but I do hear you guys asking for a mini-map. It is high up there on the list in terms of things that people are asking for, and we're aware. Any plans for more entertainment option? Crops like grapes for wine. I actually did mention grapes earlier in the stream, so I think having grapes and wine would be cool. I don't think it would make sense for the initial release, based on just all the things we want to get in. Like, I said, 6 to 10 months from now, which feels like a long time, and then suddenly it isn't. There's a lot of things we have to get in that time. You love great games. You've been around since Grim Dawn Early Access. Before that, you bought Titan Quest on CD. Man, I remember Titan Quest on CD. I actually ended up having to return it because one of the CDs was corrupt, and I had to end up getting a DVD version instead. I don't even remember why I bought a CD version in the first place. Also, back then, games came on CDs or DVDs. Imagine that. What a different time. Dino Nuggies? Is this like a breakfast cereal? So are there any more burning questions before I sign off of here? And I tell those guys over there, I'm pointing in a direction, but that's just where my work chat is. I sign off and I tell those guys over there to get version 0.9 up and running for you guys. Guild halls, temples, paper industry, libraries, ruins. All that stuff is coming up today in playtest. You know if this was already asked, but you just started watching. Are there any plans to get an overview of the existing production lines and making them more visible on the map where you are searching for them? So when you say production line, like the different industries, so like paper to books to library or something like that. It's like visualizing that. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how we'd go about doing that at this point. That would be a pretty major feature. At the crate box monument. I think turning turning the wagon into a crate box monument would be kind of funny. Burning questions. Fire brigade? Maybe in a civics update? In terms of when the patch will go live and not playtest branch, that will kind of depend on how well the playtest goes. This patch has been tested pretty thoroughly internally, so I don't expect this playtest to take very long. So I'm not gonna say it's gonna be like September or something, but I hope by the end of July, early August, this update should be live for everybody, not just the people opting into the playtest. Bridges would be wonderful. Are they planned? Sorry, might have missed that. So bridges and water gameplay in general are something we would do post-release. How involved is the new dog in the development of Farthest Frontier? Well, she does like to jump on me, so I would say very involved. She's had a hand in many decisions, especially when I accidentally deleted something. Highlighting the same type of building when placing a new one. Oh, so like, I think that might already be the case. Let's see. Oh no. So I think that's on the list. That's why I remembered it. Yeah, that's something I do think we should get in. So like when you're placing a building to highlight all the instances of it. Do we do that for decorations? No, it's just on the list. It's on the list. There it is. It's not in yet, but I do think we should do it. Can you upgrade the catapult? You would upgrade it to what? A rocket? Missile launcher? Can I add grocery shops with dino nuggies into the game? First, I'm going to have to research what dino nuggies are. Are you talking about like dino chicken nuggets? Because in that case, I know way too much about those. Any thoughts on adding a big castle, keep defensive building? So tier 2 upgraded barracks is kind of like our keep. Something larger and more powerful for late game. That's probably not in scope for the base game. But post-release, I could see potentially doing something more. You want to playtest? Well, you have to restart the map when the patch goes public. So the way our playtests work is that we try to keep them pretty stable. So if you start into playtest, there might be bugs. I will say right now that you might run into bugs. So it is always good to back up your saves, and there might be an issue that does corrupt the save. That is very rare, but it is possible it could happen in a playtest. So be aware of that. But generally, people that start in playtest just keep on going after the playtest. So if you're going to start a new map in the playtest, you could, as soon as it's live, the version is actually going to be the same. You can just keep going. Any plans to make it possible to dig out tunnels in the mountains for such things as trade tunnels or smuggler routes? Not currently. That sounds cool though. Having a wagon come out of like a tunnel you dig out. But then the raiders would use them too. But like smuggler routes to get like better prices or something, yeah. See, that's kind of the nice thing about having a foundation like this. It's like as soon as the foundation feels solid, there's just so many possibilities of what you could take, the direction you could take the game in. Can I say in general what will be possible to mod? So, as I mentioned in terms of modding, that's not going to be something that's going to just happen in one patch. But for the initial effort for modding, what we want to do is A, have Steam Workshop integration. We want to allow you to share map seeds, we want to allow you to share map saves, and we want to allow you to incorporate your own decoration buildings. So that's kind of the first step in terms of officially supporting modding. And that will happen either this next patch or the patch after. Any plans to improve terraforming? And you're talking about like raising terrain and stuff? Not currently. We'll see down the line. Current max population is 1k. Will it be increased? Yes. So population cap will be lifted, and you'll be able to set your own population cap in the future. Will you be able to dig fish ponds? We have no plans to be able to dig new bodies of water. we have different types of roads. So currently we have cobble and dirt roads. New roads in the future, maybe? It'd be purely decorative though. We actually tried having roads grant desirability and it was a shockingly heavy performance cost. So we had to cut it. Why can't the map be infinitely big? Well, because computers have finite space and memory and processing power. In fact, the larger the map you play on, the beefier your PC needs to be. So if your PC is kind of on the lower end, I do recommend playing on smaller maps. It will give you better frame rates. What about a movement speed bonus on roads? There's a movement speed bonus on roads. I don't remember if it's better on cobbled or not. Let's see. So you've got it. I don't remember if I think they do travel faster on cobbled roads versus regular roads. Yeah. So one of the upgrade bonuses for cobbled roads is increased movement speed. I knew I remembered that being the case. 2 questions about gameplay. Can I limit the amount of production in warehouse, or can you limit the amount of products in the warehouse or stockyard? Not currently. You can limit what goes into them, so you could uncheck in a stockyard or storehouse like what resources can go in there. But in terms of how much, that isn't currently a setting you will have. But we hope to get that in the future. What is education for villagers for? They're all on basic. So uneducated villagers will not be as productive as educated villagers. And some professions, for example, healers, librarians, priests, teachers, I'm forgetting some of them. I think apothecaries, those all require an education to even function. Thank you for this game. It's a breath of fresh air to the city builder genre. I'm glad you think so. This is definitely our take on it. There are lots of takes on it. Some games have beavers. Some games have giant mountains to climb. So, honestly, the town builder genre has exploded like crazy. It seems to be a habit of ours. Like, we were like, let's make this game. And there isn't too many games in that genre currently. So there'll be a nice niche to fill. And as soon as we're ready to like announce it or release it or have like early access, it's like there's 10 million of them. But thankfully, I think we found our fans. I mean, like I've mentioned earlier, and for those of you that joined us late, like almost 1 million of you have already picked up the game, which is fantastic. I hope the game continues to do as well as it's doing. There's an option to assign a production resource to a certain warehouse to create more streamlined supply line. Yeah, so absolutely. So if you build a stockyard next to a particular building, like this brickyard here, like if I set it to only store bricks and clay, I could do that. You just uncheck everything else. Like I could uncheck these things. And then yeah, so if I make it so that this is the only place that clay and bricks can go, then that will be as close as possible to this brickyard. This infinity topic interests you. No Man's Sky is an infinite universe, then why can't this be infinite? Now it's probably super complicated stuff. Well, you have to consider, just right off the bat, that No Man's Sky is not infinite in the literal sense. Like, when you fly out of a planet, you are in a system. So there might be a sun there might be some asteroids there might be some planets there. But that's kind of the extent of it. Like, that is what's loaded in your area. And even the planets themselves aren't loaded. Now, as soon as you start descending into a planet in No Man's Sky, that's when the planet is loaded and all the space stuff is unloaded. So at any given moment, only a portion of the universe is loaded in as far as your game is concerned. So as far as like your computer's thinking about it, like, okay, I've got the planet, or I've got the space around the planet. But then as soon as you're jumping to another system, like you open up an overlay map, like you see that whole map of dots and they all connect in certain ways. So like I can jump from this solar system to this solar system. So then like this one unloads, that one loads. So while it is hypothetically infinite, not infinite all at once. And it's kind of in a similar sense here. Like you can have infinite towns in Frontier, but they're not all loaded at the same time. Your big project is almost 1/3 finished, and it's a small map on a powerful PC. Loads about 5 minutes. So biggest maps are really about players' PC performance. Yep. And then reducing load times is something that we're actually looking into. So that will get better. So if you're getting 5-minute load times, like it will actually get better, thankfully. Well, can you build walls and curves in the future? There are no plans to do spline walls, as they're called. Angled walls will probably happen, though. Alright, guys, I suppose what I should do now is get that playtest up for you. Or I should tell someone to get that playtest up for you, and I should get back to my spreadsheets. So any final questions before I sign off? If there's any building that I've shown off today, or a picture I've shown off today, that you guys want to see again really quick. When you fix a visual bug about workers whose 100% of the time spent on goods transportation in mines. Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Yeah, excited to play this. I'm glad you're excited, and like I said, coming up really soon. The horses! Yes, let's get the horses back up. Oh wait, wrong horses again. There it is. There's the highlight of the stream right there. The horses. Release the horses. So horses are not coming in version 0.9, just to make that clear. So again, thank you guys for stopping by the stream today. I hope this little taste of what's coming today and in the future is going to hold you guys over and get you pumped for what else is coming for the game. Like, Frontier is going to be way bigger of a game than we originally planned, as is our habit of doing more. And I hope you guys are excited for what more is. And there's even more still to come. So stay tuned for the playtest coming up very soon. Stay tuned on the forum. We're going to be posting a blog summarizing everything I just said today. And as always, stay tuned for future patches as we make our way towards 1.0 later in the future. So take care, guys. Thank you for stopping by. We'll see you again in the future.